I'm Jeff Schwartz, and this is our February 2021 update. Let's check out what we got going on in the shop this month. As you can see, we're cranking out the chassis here in the assembly area. This one here is a Ford F1 pickup truck with a Coyote engine. There's about 10 chassis total in this room right now. This 74 Nova's got most of the interior in it. We had a problem with this seat not wanting to adjust or recline, so that's an issue when you try to use salvage parts on custom cars. So we'll get this all buttoned up, and then we've got to put the sill plates on, finish off an AC duct in the glove box, and we're pretty close to doing a test drive in this one. This ProCharge Mercury Cougar is looking pretty good. We're working on wiring right now, and maybe about 2 months she should be ready for a test drive. Well, the hood is back on this Woody, and that's good news. We've had it on the chassis dyno. It made 605 horsepower at the rear wheel, which equates to 720 at the crank. So this thing is going to be quite a riot, especially with this Schwartz G-Machine chassis under here, and the 14-inch brakes and the 6-speed manual trimming. We finally got the covers on the rear view cameras that I talked about last month, so those are on here, and we're just waiting for the weather to clear so we can test drive this thing and make the final adjustments. This Whipple Charge 75 Trans Am has made a trip to the dyno and a trip to the upholstery shop. It's back here because we're losing a little bit of fuel pressure during the dyno pulls, so we needed a bigger fuel pump setup. So we've got a dual pump setup that's going in there, and it'll be back on the dyno hopefully next week. The interior, we have the dashboard all stitched with the dark blue leather and the silver stitching, and we've got the foam fitted for the rear seat area. And the seats are done, and we still need to do the door panels and so forth. This 54 Studebaker, we've been working on plumbing. So in the case of a dry sump engine with a supercharger and an intercooler, there's an intercooler pump, an intercooler heat exchanger, dry sump tank, and so forth. So a lot of stuff in a very small space. So we've had to clearance the inner fender a bit to clear the dry sump tank, and we're trying to fit everything in here. So plumbing and a little bit more. On this Mustang with the LT4 supercharged Chevy engine, we've been waiting for a few things, such as the fuel tank, which has been on order for quite a long time, I might add. And once we get the fuel tank, we can continue with the plumbing and routing of the rear tailpipes, which obviously need to go around the fuel tank. So waiting for just a couple of components, and then this thing will be very close to doing the final paint and body. A few things have transpired on this 78 Mercedes-Benz 450 SLC that we've been working on. We had to cut the floor out to fit this custom chassis, and in doing so, we found some rust on the inner rockers. So when we went to cut out the inner rockers to replace it, we could see that there was rust on the outer rocker as well that had been kind of bondoed over and painted on the outside. So fortunately, we were able to see the rust from the inside, and we were able to basically cut it off of there, and we are replacing the outer rocker as well as the inner rocker. This copper stuff is like weld-through primer, which basically prevents corrosion on the inside after you close up the whole thing. So you can see the other side where we've actually completed the rocker, and we're fabricating a new one here on this side as well to match the other side. This also had rust issues inside the rocker. This 63 Chevy 2 Nova now has the chassis fitted to it. This was a real clean California car. It appeared to have original paint or maybe near original paint. I guess it was a dark red, come to think of it, and it was more of a bright red when we got it. So it had been repainted at some time in its life, and we thought, well, it really looks like a clean car. But once we media blasted it again, we ended up finding a bunch of rust holes. So there's rust in the quarters on both sides. We're not going to need to replace both quarters, but we'll have to do like a partial replacement in two areas on both sides of the car. So we're in the process of cutting out the wheel tubs to do the mini tub, and we'll do that quarter panel kind of at the same time. So the chassis has been fitted and we're working on mini tubbing it and rust repair. This is my 50 Studebaker. We had a chance to do a couple little things on it this month. So this is the front spoiler. It's not in its final form yet, but it'll essentially be kind of curved over here to blend in with the round style of the fender. So essentially it'll kind of follow that curve and come down here. We'll finish that off, finish welding the mounting flange on, and it'll bolt up pretty much flush with the body here. So what we've done in here is we've created a gusset, you can see it here out of sheet metal, that basically ties in the wheel well, the inner wheelhouse, with the outer shell of the body, and also ties it into the rear package tray area, which has a brace going across the body here. Then we made these diagonal braces with bead rolled stiffeners rolled into them, and that's also welded into there. And then we also have a triangular gusset here, gusseting the wheelhouse to the new floor that we fabricated. So all that will prevent things from twisting when we're autocrossing it with sticky tires. And then what we have here is the original seat base bottom, and we cut all the coil springs off of here and just fabricated this metal piece that will actually support high density foam that'll be put on here. So this will be covered with high density foam and leather, and this will be a lot lighter than all the springs that are on there. And the springs tend to give you a very bouncy ride, so by replacing that with high density foam, you have more of a modern car feel to the seating. So we do that on a lot of these old cars. We use the original seat frame, the bottom of the seat frame, cut off the coil springs, and then fabricate something to hold the foam. And we have a perfectly fitting seat that ends up giving a modern feel. So this is the front seat for the 50 Studebaker. And similarly, we've cut all the coil springs off of here. And in this case, we had to modify the center part of the seat to clear the transmission tunnel. Due to the car being lowered and having a much larger transmission and drive shaft in there that was ever in there before, we had to raise the drive shaft tunnel, or the transmission tunnel, in the car. So we had to refabricate that out of sheet metal. There was a lot of rust in the floors anyway, so we just made the entire floor, including the tunnel, from scratch. And then we had to raise this up with tubing to clear the tunnel. So what we're doing here is we took the original bottom of the factory seat, cut it into two pieces, and we've got a pan on here. This will get some more lightning holes. You have to have holes in it because when you put the high density foam in it, if you sit on it, the air from the foam needs to go out the bottom of the seat. If not, when you sit on it, it'll kind of bulge up the leather and kind of mess up your upholstery. So those still have to be drilled in here, and then we have to make something across here to kind of connect the two halves. But this is the original Studebaker seat piece here. It had coil springs which have all been cut off, and then the pan, we just need to connect the dots here, and then the high density foam will get glued onto here and then upholstered in leather and suede. So this 47 is up here on the dyno. Wait a minute, you say. Did they get a dyno? Well, actually, no, we didn't get a dyno. Our friend Jesse, who tunes many of our cars, got a dyno and needed a place to park it, and we happened to have about 5 cars that needed to be tuned. So we let him park it here temporarily, and as soon as he's done tuning them, it's going to be going away. So no, we didn't get a dyno, but there's one here right now, and we're just tuning a few of these cars, and then we'll have our space back again. The 47 Hudson here, we made a few passes on the dyno, and the ECU went faulty. Somehow it locked up. So we've got another one coming, and then we'll see what this thing makes. It's a 485 horsepower Chrysler Hemi crate engine, so I'm guessing it should be somewhere at 400 rear wheel, maybe a little bit over that. Our first pull was around 360, I believe. So a little bit more to go there with tuning the timing and fuel curve, and this should be wrapped up next week. So the rear end from Moser Engineering finally came in for this 69 Chevelle, and we've got it in there, and we're just topping off the fluids and so forth, and this thing will be out of here real soon. This 78 Porsche 924 has been sitting around here a little while waiting for this windshield to get here. Well, the first one ended up getting damaged in shipment, and then we had to wait for another one, but we finally got the windshield, and it is in, and we've got all the window trim painted and kind of mocked up there, waiting for some clips to come to hold those on. This thing has the very rare D-production style Fender Flares that Porsche used to sell through their parts department for people that wanted to race these in the D-production road racing class in SCCA. So this one's going to be vintage raced, and we will be putting it together with a roll bar very shortly. The roll bar, actually there was a pre-made one available, so that's coming from Auto Power Industries. We'll be putting a roll bar in there. We got the CV joint axles, and it'll be going together real soon, and hopefully it'll be on the track this summer. This trophy next to me is the championship trophy from the 2020 Midwestern Council of Sports Car Clubs Autocross Series. I won the points championship in the Street Unlimited class, which is essentially street legal cars with unlimited modifications on a 200 treadwear tire. So the old Pontiac still has some competitive blood there. And as far as shop updates, stay tuned for next month. This is all we have time for today, and we'll show you the other cars we're working on, as well as the progress we've made in the last month on the ones you saw today.